Good morning, Governor. 2 questions, please. You've mentioned, and also this was mentioned in the statement in the morning, that there is expectation that growth is going to be revised, will be better than what is expected. Do you all hope to make a revision on that? Is there a possibility that that might be announced perhaps in the next policy? And the second question is, under the new Central Bank Act, of course we all know that inflation was set at 5%, but there was this 2% margin, right? It can't be 2% less. So, I mean, by the looks of things, if inflation is lower than 3%, the central bank is responsible to make presentations before Parliament. How do you see the situation? I mean, by the looks of it, do you think that we will see inflation reach 3% by the end of this year? And how do you hope to navigate this clause in the Central Bank Act, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I think on the growth question first, we already know the actual growth for first half. I think when you look at the first half growth, and we can see clearly the trend of growth. So growth chart, you can see clearly there's after last 2 years contraction due to the crisis, now there's a recovery path. There's clear recovery path is there. Early expectation that 2024 would be around 3% in our predictions, and IMF had, I think, 2%. They revised from 1.2, and other agencies also had around 2%. But it's going to be definitely what we see as when you look at the early indicators and current economic activities and some of the forward-looking indicators, we now see strong evidence that economy will be growing well over 3%. But I think it's too early for us to project specific number. Obviously, projection of economic growth is based on the assumption that you want to make. That's where you can see different projections by different agencies based on what they assume. So, but I don't think we will not announce officially this is our projection for this year. We can obviously go with the actual numbers when they come out, and towards the end of the year, probably when we see actual numbers, we might revise. I'm sure budget Minister of Finance will have to revise their projections when they present budget. So that would be the point, I think, in cycle that we will be revising by the Minister of Finance or the Central Bank, the growth projections. But obviously, we will be sharing the actual numbers whenever that comes out. The second part of it, please remind, I just forgot it.
About the Central Bank Act and the fact that
obviously, this. If you look at the Central Bank Act and the agreement that we have signed on the new Central Bank Act with the Minister of Finance to maintain inflation mid-single digit, around 5%, with a quarterly. If you can remember, the agreement is that quarterly inflation should be maintained around 5% with a margin of 2% plus or minus. And if there's a breach of the targets 2 consecutive quarters, then that would trigger central bank to submit a report to the Parliament and to the public, the reasons why there's a breach and how we can bring back the inflation towards target level. So that certainly will happen. So we will wait until September inflation number. I think most likely Q3 and Q2, 2 consecutive quarters, there could be a breach on the downside, which is inflation target would likely be breached, the lower bound in 2 consecutive quarters. Then that will certainly trigger for us to write a report by monetary policy report. We will submit that report to the Parliament, to the Minister of Finance, and Minister of Finance will submit that to the Parliament and to the public. So we are in that process, and obviously the reasons why there's a breach, obviously there are certain reasons, as we explained already. This sharp decline or lower interest, lower inflation at this point is mainly coming from not necessarily the monetary policy kind of actions or demand pressures, is coming from administrative price changes of electric tariff mainly. That's the main source. So that's where we need to, so short term, that's why this low inflation, because of that administrative price change. That's going to be persistent. We have to take into account how we can we need to address that going forward. But if you look at the inflation forecast, the fan chart in our current projections, this short-term lower inflation will come back to, especially the base effect for next year, will come back towards our target level. So that's where we think, why we maintain from the monetary policy point of view, why we did not revise monetary policy interest rates at this point, is basically with the forward-looking basis, looking at all the other variables, external and domestic factors.